science. Without it, we would know nothing. Or everything. You be the judge. Meh. Now, as I show some data, statistics, I don't want it to come across as me giving the message that we shouldn't pursue sciences, or we shouldn't have the pursuit of knowledge. The pursuit of knowledge is good. The sciences are good, but they come laden with flaws, and they're vulnerable to misconduct, prejudices, biases, lies, and errors. And that's just part of being human. You know, we're going to mess up, and a lot of us are liars. A lot of us are out for personal gain and things like that. So I just wanted to bring you some data on how many times scientists, experts, scholars, historians, and things of that nature have been caught lying or have been caught in cases of misconduct for whatever the reason, and the many cases of just being wrong, just errors. And it's important to keep in mind that many of the lies, misconduct, and errors don't get caught. I would say most don't get caught. And these ideas and errors or lies are circulating throughout our ethos. So first I want to discuss the misconduct cases, which would be something like falsification, lies, and things of that nature. For self-admitted serious misconduct, 2% of scientists admit to having fabricated, falsified, or modified data or results at least once in their career. Up to 14% of scientists have observed a colleague or coworker commit falsification. Now, for academic misconduct retractions, one study identified 25,710 cases of academic misconduct retractions out of 31,003 total retractions. That's between the years 2000 and 2023. So a vast majority of the retractions were done for cases of misconduct. And in 2023 alone, there was over 10,000 research papers that were retracted, which became our new annual record. So we're on the rise with lying, misconduct, and falsification in science. It's a steady, heavy increase occurring year by year. But like I said in the beginning, this doesn't mean we should not have the sciences keep going, or we shouldn't pursue knowledge, but we should take it all with a grain of salt when we hear something from a scholar, expert, scientist, medical professional, anthropologist, or anything along those lines. Anybody who's an intellectual or an expert, everything they say should be taken with a grain of salt. Be skeptical. Also be optimistic, but know that it's in human nature for us to lie and be deceitful. And then you also have many humans that are truth seekers. So don't be fully skeptical. I mean, have some optimism, but you would be insane and a crazy person if you didn't have a little bit of skepticism towards the sciences, intellectuals, experts, scholars, professors, teachers, all that stuff. And many of you already practice this, because in years past, I was a teacher for programming and development, and I would recommend a certain thing, and then many of you would come back and say, no, you're crazy and stupid. So you already have the skepticism in you. I know it. You just have to be careful that when you're believing something, it might be the case that you're believing it because that data or those studies or findings might help corroborate some kind of bias or ideology that you are aligned with. And that's when we're the most vulnerable to believing something that is false or lies, is when we have a feeling or an idea, and then somebody says something, an expert says something that backs up our idea and supports it. Now we'll just break down specific fields of science so we can have a deeper understanding. Now with retractions, they're the most formal and measurable indicator, but they represent only a tip of the iceberg when it comes to flawed research. Most of the lies, falsification, and misconduct goes unreported, and it just remains in circulation and in academia, in the universities and school systems. So we're going to look at medical science. So since 2012, a review of biomedical and life science research articles indexed by PubMed, 2,047 retracted articles. The causes of those retractions were misconduct, which would be lying or falsifying, and another reason for the retractions would just be error, just getting things wrong. So it states that 67.4% of retractions were attributed to misconduct, fraud, plagiarism, lying, or falsifying. And for error, just getting things wrong, it was 21.3%. So as we conduct science, we're going to get a lot of things wrong, and that's okay. But everyone should be aware of it. There's a lot of things that are false and wrong, and it doesn't have a malicious intent behind it, like the misconduct reasons. It's just human error. And we also have a section of questionable research practices. These are less evil than outright fraud, but they still compromise the outcomes. Up to 12.5% of scientists admitted to engaging in questionable research practices. Up to 39.7% reported being aware of others who had used questionable research practices. Now, while we're still in the medical science area, one study that analyzed electronic health records at 29 different hospitals found that 23% of patients who were transferred to an intensive care unit or died experienced a diagnostic error. And these errors often led to harm or death. So you could be admitted to a hospital, and people caring for you could misdiagnose you, and that could lead to your death or serious injury. But again, I'm not saying don't go to the hospital if you need to, or don't seek care. I'm just saying be careful, get second opinions, get third opinions. And there's many people in the medical field who will just diagnose you some sort of way so that they can make money off of that situation that they're claiming you have. A good example is what we saw just a few years ago with the virus. There were many medical professionals falsifying data, which is all on record now, and it's all coming to the surface now. And actually, it was coming to the surface during the time it was happening, and it was a very politically divided situation. Now here we'll discuss life sciences or social sciences like anthropology, but not exclusive to anthropology. The retraction data for those fields, that 67.4% of retractions were due to misconduct. Survey data has suggested that a pooled weighted average of about 1.97%, so about 2% of scientists admit to fabricating or falsifying data at least once, and those are just the ones that admit it, and a much higher percentage of up to 72% admit to other questionable research practices. Now we'll discuss psychiatric science. 14.12% of scientists reported that they believed their colleagues were involved in such serious misconduct. Up to 33.7% of scientists have admitted to other questionable research practices. Out of 3,131 mental health care patients surveyed, 50.65% experienced an error in their health record. 34.78% experienced an omission, which is missing information in their record, and 37.78% felt offended by the content of the notes in their record. Now we'll quickly discuss physics and astronomy. And there's not a lot of solid data on the total amounts, but there are some documented cases, which I'll discuss. Ptolemy, who's an astronomer from the 2nd century AD, allegedly claimed to have performed astronomical measurements that he did not. Hipparchus, who's also an astronomer from the 2nd century BC, allegedly published a star catalog from Babylonian sources as his own. So lying and plagiarizing. Galileo Galilei, physicist, early 17th century, allegedly exaggerated the outcome of experimental results. Robert Millikan, physicist, earlier 20th century, allegedly kept unfavorable data out of his published papers on the electron charge experiment. Adrian van Manen, astronomer, earlier 20th century, allegedly misreported the reliability of key astronomical observations. Jan Hendrik Schön, condensed matter physics, found to have committed scientific misconduct in 16 cases involving data manipulation and misrepresentation across his research papers. He's had 32 of his publications retracted. Viktor Ninov, nuclear chemistry and physics, found guilty of fabricating data related to the alleged discovery of super heavy elements 116 and 118 at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. Ranga P. Dias, condensed matter physics, found to have committed research misconduct, including data fabrication and falsification related to his work on alleged room temperature superconducting materials. And he's had 5 of his research papers retracted. So I could sit here and go on and on for days and days and days, digging into each field of science and expertise. And we could also do the same thing with scholars of history and history itself. There's so many lies in history. So I just want to emphasize here as I wrap things up that just because somebody is a scientist, expert, professor, scholar, historian, anthropologist, whatever the expert might be in whatever field, doesn't mean you should just believe them when they make claims or when they put out a scientific paper. All of it should be taken with a grain of salt and with the knowledge that we humans are flawed and we lie for things like monetary gain, personal gain, for advancement in our careers, for political pressure. You could be a decent scientist and then you get politically pressured, or maybe even politically threatened, or not threatened politically, but just threatened by some entity that has a lot of power. They might threaten to hurt people that you know and love, and that could cause you to fudge numbers or bring about false findings. Just because all of this doesn't mean we should stop the pursuit of knowledge or stop conducting sciences. We should keep doing all of those things. But let's not be so easily brainwashed and tricked into things. And if those things could lead to the destruction or the harm of many people, we should really stay aware. Because a lot of these things in a whole bunch of these scientific fields could have a very harmful, detrimental effect on large populations. And I encourage you to do your own research into this matter. But don't let it depress you or get you down, make you angry or upset. Because being angry or upset is demonic.